All right, let's jump right in, shall we? Today we're diving deep into the world of credit repair and building.
Sounds good to me.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So you've shared a couple of ebooks with me. One's all about credit repair
hmm
techniques, and the other outlines this like 30-day challenge to build credit.
Right. A lot of people are looking for that kind of practical advice, something they can actually use.
Absolutely. So let's get right to it. Both of these ebooks, they really hammer home the importance of understanding your credit reports and scores.
Yeah.
And they suggest, like right off the bat, pull your reports from all three bureaus.
hmm
Experian, Equifax, TransUnion.
That's key because, a lot of people don't realize that their scores can actually be different between the bureaus.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and even from what you see on those credit monitoring sites.
Huh. Why is that?
Well, each bureau, they might have slightly different information. Not all creditors report to all three,
I see.
and they might be using different scoring models too.
Oh, wow. So it's not just about like, is the data accurate? It's also how it's being interpreted.
Exactly. And some lenders, they even use these older FICO models, which just adds another layer of complexity.
That's kind of unsettling, isn't it? Like trying to hit a moving target.
It can be. That's why the ebooks, they try to break down the core factors that really influence your score, no matter what model's being used.
Okay, so what are those core factors? Give us the rundown.
All right. So the big one is your payment history. That accounts for a whopping 35% of your FICO score.
35%. Wow. Okay, so pay your bills on time, people. What else?
Then there's the amount you owe. That's 30%. Basically, how much debt you're carrying compared to your credit limits.
Makes sense. Don't overextend yourself. Keep those balances low.
Right. And then the length of your credit history makes up another 15%. So basically, the longer you've been responsibly managing credit, the better.
Like the more trust you've built up over time.
Precisely. And here's something I bet a lot of people don't think about. Closing those old credit cards,
Oh, yeah, you think that would help your score, right?
it can actually hurt it. Keeping those older accounts open, even with zero balances, can really boost your score because it shows you have a longer history of responsible credit management.
Huh. Interesting. So it's like the older, the better.
You got it. And then, there's your credit mix. Do you have a mix of different types of credit, like credit cards, installment loans, things like that?
Okay, so diversity is good.
Diversity is good. And then there's the average age of your accounts. The older, the better, as we said.
Gotcha. Now, let's talk about those inquiries on your credit report. I know this can impact your score, right?
Absolutely. The ebooks make a clear distinction between hard and soft inquiries.
Okay, so remind us, what's the difference there?
Sure. Hard inquiries happen when you apply for new credit, like you're applying for a credit card or a loan.
Right.
Those can ding your score a little bit.
But they're not permanent, right?
Exactly. The impact fades over time. Now, soft inquiries, those don't affect your score at all.
Well, that's good. So what are those?
Well, it could be when you check your own credit or if a company is checking your credit for like pre-approval offers, things like that.
Okay, makes sense. So you shouldn't be too worried about those soft inquiries.
Not at all. They're just part of the normal course of things.
Okay, good to know. Now, one ebook really dives into this thing called check systems, which is kind of like a whole separate credit score, but specifically for checking accounts, right?
Yeah, a lot of people don't even know it exists.
I had no idea.
It's like a hidden score.
Yeah.
But it can really impact your ability to open a new checking account if you have negative marks on your check systems report.
Oh, wow. So what kind of things does it track?
Things like bounce checks, involuntary account closures, even suspected fraudulent activity.
Okay, so serious stuff.
It is, and it's just another example of how important it is to be mindful of your financial habits. Every action has consequences.
Absolutely. Now, one of the most helpful things I found in both of these ebooks was the emphasis on disputing any inaccurate information on your credit reports.
That's huge,
And they even provide like sample letters that you can use to challenge those errors.
which is super helpful because navigating that process on your own can be really confusing.
Totally. And they emphasize using certified mail for all communication with credit bureaus and creditors.
That's smart. It creates a paper trail and gives you proof that you sent those letters.
It's like having legal backup to make sure your rights are protected.
Exactly. And speaking of legal protection, these ebooks talk a lot about the Fair Credit Reporting Act, or FCRA.
Oh, right. What does that do for us?
Well, it gives you the right to dispute those inaccuracies, and the credit bureaus are legally obligated to investigate.
So they can't just ignore you.
Not at all. They have 30 days to respond once you file a dispute, and they have to correct any errors they find.
Wow, that's good to know. So what kind of errors can you typically challenge?
All sorts of things. Incorrect balances, late payments that were reported after an account was closed, even just an inaccurate account number. If it's not right, you can dispute it.
Okay, good to know. And they also talk about removing those old addresses from your credit report, right?
Yes, they do. That's important because you don't want outdated information lingering on your report.
Right. Makes sense. And what about those unauthorized inquiries? Can you dispute those too?
Absolutely. If you see an inquiry that you didn't authorize, you can absolutely dispute it.
Okay, good to know. So it's like you have the power to clean up your credit report and make sure it's accurate and up to date.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's half the battle when it comes to credit repair. It's all about taking control.
Love it. Now, both of these ebooks, they also have a whole chapter on like advanced credit repair tactics.
Oh, yeah. Those get a little more complex.
They do. They talk about dealing with tax liens and judgments and even this thing called a security freeze.
Right. A security freeze is a powerful tool.
What does it do?
It basically prevents lenders from accessing your credit history. So it makes it much harder for someone to open new accounts in your name.
Oh, wow. So it's like a way to protect yourself from identity theft?
Exactly. But it also makes it harder for you to apply for new credit, so you have to weigh the pros and cons.
Okay, so it's not something to do lightly.
Right. You want to use it strategically.
Got it. And if you run into any unfair practices, the ebooks suggest filing complaints with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and your state attorney general.
Absolutely. It's
Oh.
important to know your rights and hold creditors accountable.
I agree. Now let's move on to something a little more fun. The shopping cart trick.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
It sounds like a secret hack for getting credit cards.
It can be. It's a way for people with bad or limited credit to potentially get approved for a credit card without a hard inquiry on their credit report.
Wait, so you're saying I can get a credit card just by putting things in my online shopping cart?
Well, it's a little more nuanced than that, but basically, some retailers will offer you a pre-approval for a credit card during the checkout process, and that pre-approval doesn't trigger a hard inquiry.
That's amazing.
Oh.
But what about the ethical implications of like opening credit lines that you don't really intend to use?
That's a valid concern, and the ebooks really emphasize using this trick responsibly. The goal is to get the credit line for the score boost, not to rack up debt.
Okay, that makes sense. It's about being strategic and using these techniques to improve your overall credit situation.
Exactly.
So they list specific retailers that have been successful with this, like Amazon, Walmart, Overstock.
Yep.
I'll have to try that. They also recommend utilizing credit unions, specifically Navy Federal Credit Union and Pentagon Federal Credit Union. What makes them so special?
Well, credit unions are member-owned, so they tend to offer better rates and terms than traditional banks.
Oh, that's good.
And Navy Federal, for instance, they're known for giving pretty generous credit limits, even to people with less than perfect credit.
Okay, so it's like finding those hidden gems in the financial world.
Exactly. Looking beyond the big banks and exploring those lesser-known options.
Love it. They also mention building business credit, which seems like a whole other world to navigate.
It is. But it's essential for entrepreneurs. It separates your personal finances from your business finances, which can protect your personal credit.
Okay, that makes sense. And can open up more funding opportunities for your business too, right?
Absolutely. The ebooks outline all the steps involved, from incorporating your business to getting an EIN and a DUNS number.
Sounds like we could do a whole separate deep dive on just that topic.
We totally could.
But for now, let's shift gears and talk about something that's probably on a lot of people's minds. Student loans.
Ah, yes. The student loan dilemma.
Both of these ebooks, they really emphasize the importance of understanding the different types of student loans, from subsidized and unsubsidized to those parent PLUS loans.
It's crucial to know the difference because they all have different terms and repayment options.
Right. Choosing the wrong loan can have a serious impact on your financial well-being down the road.
Absolutely.
And they delve into the pros and cons of consolidating your loans, too.
Yeah, consolidating can simplify your repayment by combining all those loans into one, but it's not always the best move.
How so?
Well, it can extend your repayment period, and you might end up paying more in interest over the life of the loan.
Okay, so it's not a magic solution. You really have to consider your individual circumstances and goals before making any decisions about consolidation.
Exactly. It's all about making informed choices.
I agree. Now, I was a little surprised by how upfront one of the ebooks was about public service loan forgiveness, or PSLF. Apparently, the approval rate is incredibly low.
Yeah, only about 1% of applicants were approved back in 2017.
Wow, That's discouraging.
It is, which is why it's so important to do your research and make sure you meet all the eligibility requirements.
And have your paperwork in order.
Oh, absolutely. Meticulous record keeping is key when it comes to student loan forgiveness.
It's like hope is not a strategy.
Right. You need a plan.
The ebooks also discuss a whole bunch of other student loan management options like deferment, forbearance, loan rehabilitation, income-driven repayment plans.
Income-driven repayment plans can be a real lifesaver for borrowers who are struggling with their monthly payments.
How do those work?
They base your payments on your income and family size, so they're much more manageable.
Oh, that sounds less intimidating than those standard repayment plans that seem to go on forever.
They can, but income-driven plans, they offer a little more flexibility.
I like the sound of that. What else did they say about those plans?
Well, some of them even offer loan forgiveness after a certain number of years of qualifying payments, so there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay, so it's like a long-term strategy for tackling that student loan debt. Now, before we get too bogged down in repayment plans, tell me more about this 30-day credit challenge.
Oh, yeah, that's a fun one. It's all about building momentum and taking action.
Okay, so it's like a boot camp for your credit score.
Exactly. It's structured around weekly themes, with tasks designed to help you make real progress.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more about these themes.
Okay, so the first week is called Ratchet Ways Must Go, and it's all about creating a financial vision, analyzing your student loan debt, identifying areas where you can cut back on spending.
So it's about laying the foundation for a healthier financial lifestyle.
Precisely.
What about the other weeks? What kind of things do they focus on?
The following weeks, they delve into building those positive habits, like setting savings goals, exploring mortgage options, even building business credit.
Wow, so it's a pretty comprehensive approach. It's not just about the technical stuff. It's about changing your mindset, too.
Exactly. It's about feeling empowered to take control of your finances.
Love it. Now, before we move on to the next part of our deep dive, I have to ask about something we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah.
Judgments and foreclosures. Those seem like pretty major blows to your credit.
They are. Judgments are a matter of public record, so disputing those can be tricky. The ebooks actually suggest seeking legal advice in those scenarios.
Okay, so maybe call in a specialist for that?
Exactly. And foreclosures, those are a whole other beast. The ebooks acknowledge that navigating a foreclosure can be really difficult, and they recommend getting legal counsel to understand your rights and options.
So it's about knowing when to seek professional help.
Right. Not every credit problem can be solved on your own.
That's good advice. And they even mention specific letters for handling identity theft, right?
They do. Identity theft can really wreak havoc on your credit, so it's good to have those resources on hand. They even have a template for filing an FTC identity theft report.
That's awesome. So it's like they've got you covered for every possible scenario.
They try to.
Well, I have to say, these ebooks have already given us a ton of valuable information.
We've barely scratched the surface.
I know. But we'll dive deeper into all of this in the next part of our deep dive, so stay tuned.
Can't wait. It's fascinating how these ebooks, they really connect the dots between those seemingly small actions and their impact on your overall credit health. Like they talk about credit utilization.
Credit utilization. Now, that's something I haven't heard before.
It's basically the percentage of your available credit that you're actually using.
Oh, okay, got it.
And the lower that percentage is, the better it is for your credit score.
So, like, if I have a credit card with a $10,000 limit, I should try to keep my balance under, say, $3,000.
Exactly. It shows lenders that you're managing your credit responsibly, not maxing out your cards.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that I never really thought about, but now that you mention it, yeah, it makes a big difference.
Absolutely. Little things add up. And speaking of little things adding up, we were talking about that 30-day credit challenge earlier. One of the coolest things about it is how much it focuses on mindset.
Yeah, they really seem to be pushing for a shift in perspective, like moving away from that feeling of being overwhelmed by debt.
Right. It's about feeling empowered to take control.
Exactly.
And the challenge, it lays out all these practical steps like creating a budget, tracking your spending, setting those financial goals, but it does it all within this framework of like, hey, you've got this.
It's not just about a quick fix. It's about making those long-term lifestyle changes.
Exactly. Changes that support your credit building journey.
It makes a lot of sense. It's more holistic than just focusing on those, like, technical strategies.
You got it. It's all about integrating those strategies into, a broader approach to your financial well-being.
Love it. Now, I remember we were discussing student loans earlier, and one of the ebooks mentions this thing called a 5-day reinsertion letter. What is that all about?
Oh, that's a good one. It's basically a tool you can use if a creditor tries to sneak a negative item back onto your credit report after you've already gotten it removed.
No way. So they try to pull a fast one.
It happens. But the 5-day reinsertion letter, it basically reminds them of their legal obligations under the FCRA. Like, hey, I know my rights.
Oh, it's like a legal shield.
Exactly. It protects those hard-won credit gains.
Nice. What other strategies do the ebooks suggest for, dealing with those pesky creditors?
Well, they really emphasize that, you have rights as a consumer. Don't be afraid to exercise them, whether it's disputing errors, negotiating with creditors, or even filing complaints with those regulatory agencies. It's all about taking control.
Being proactive.
Exactly. You're not a victim. You're in the driver's seat.
I noticed the 30-day challenge also includes saving money tips.
Oh, absolutely. Saving is a huge piece of the credit building puzzle. It's like having a safety net for your finances.
I love that analogy. It makes saving a lot less scary.
Right. It doesn't have to be this daunting thing. The ebook suggests setting a rainy day fund goal and breaking it down into smaller, more manageable milestones.
Okay, that's doable. What else?
They also suggest getting your friends or family involved, like make it a team sport.
Oh, I like that. Accountability buddies.
Exactly. It makes the whole process more fun and less intimidating.
For sure. Did the ebooks mention any other financial goals besides that rainy day fund?
They do. They talk about buying a home and how having a good credit score can get you better mortgage terms, which can save you a ton of money on interest in the long run.
Yeah, that's a huge motivator. Did they offer any tips on navigating that whole mortgage world?
They break down the different types of mortgages like FHA loans, VA loans, conventional loans. Each one has its own set of requirements and benefits, so it's important to know the difference.
It's like, do your research before you jump in.
Exactly. Be informed. Make
Yeah.
those choices confidently.
I feel like these ebooks are all about that. Making informed financial decisions, whether it's choosing a credit card, consolidating loans, whatever.
You got it. It's about having that knowledge so you don't feel lost in all the financial jargon.
Right, you're empowered. Now, speaking of empowerment, one of the ebooks mentions these alternative credit cards and credit lines. I'm curious about those.
Oh, yeah. It's about thinking outside the box, going beyond those traditional credit cards. Like secured credit cards, those are great for people with bad or limited credit.
How do those work?
Well, you put down a security deposit, and that basically becomes your credit limit. So it's like you're putting up collateral to show that you're trustworthy.
Okay, makes sense. A good starting point. What other alternatives do they talk about?
They mentioned credit builder accounts. Those are kind of interesting.
How so?
It's almost like a reverse loan. You make payments first, and then you get the money.
Oh, wow. That's different.
It is, but it's a way to show responsible credit behavior and build up your score.
Interesting. I'm really impressed with all the different options these ebooks cover.
Right. It's a whole toolkit. They really try to cater to people in all kinds of situations.
For sure. Now, I know we talked about the shopping cart trick earlier, but it's such a cool concept that I'd love to hear more about the specifics, like how do you actually do it?
The Credit Secrets ebook, it lays out a step-by-step process, like make sure you clear your browser history, create a new account on the retailer's website, stuff like that.
Oh, okay. So it's more strategic than I thought.
It is. It increases your chances of getting that pre-approved offer without the hard inquiry.
Interesting. So it's all about maximizing those chances. But again, not about going crazy with spending.
Right. It's about getting the credit line and using it responsibly to build a positive payment history.
Got it. Now, one theme that really stands out in both ebooks is this emphasis on consumer rights. They both talk about the Fair Credit Reporting Act, or FCRA, as like a powerful tool for challenging those inaccuracies on your credit report.
Yeah, the FCRA is a big deal. It gives consumers a lot of leverage.
How so?
Well, it forces the credit bureaus to investigate any disputed information and to correct those errors. Plus, it limits how long that negative information can stay on your report.
Okay, so it's like they can't just keep that stuff there forever.
Exactly. There are rules.
That's good to know. I noticed the ebooks had a bunch of sample letters for different situations. What kind of letters were those?
They had letters for disputing errors, requesting validation from creditors, even dealing with identity theft.
Wow, so they've got you covered.
It's all about taking charge, not just sitting back and letting things happen to you.
Being proactive.
Exactly. You're in control of your credit story.
Love it. Now, I'm curious, did the ebooks mention anything about those goodwill letters? I've heard about those.
They do. Goodwill letters, they're a way to ask a creditor to remove late payments from your report, as a gesture of goodwill.
So pleading your case.
Sort of. It works best if you have a legitimate reason for those missed payments and a good track record of on-time payments otherwise.
So they can see that it was just a fluke.
Right. It shows that you're generally responsible with your credit.
Do they offer any tips on writing those letters?
They say to be sincere, specific about what happened, and don't make excuses or blame others. Take responsibility, but also highlight your commitment to making things right.
It's all about tone, right?
Yeah, finding that balance.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to touch on something that can be a bit of a sensitive topic. Bankruptcy. Did the ebooks address that at all?
They do, but briefly. They emphasize that bankruptcy should only be considered as a last resort.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty drastic measure.
It is. It's a serious legal process, and it can have a long-term impact on your credit.
So it's not a quick fix.
Definitely not. The ebooks really stress the importance of talking to a legal professional before making any decisions about bankruptcy.
So get some expert advice.
Exactly. Make sure you understand all the implications.
I feel like that's the overall message of these ebooks, right? It's about empowering yourself with knowledge so you can make those informed decisions.
You got it. They're about giving you the tools and the knowledge to navigate this complex world of credit.
And to build a brighter financial future.
That's the goal.
Well, this has been incredibly insightful. We've covered a lot of ground in this second part of our deep dive.
We have.
From credit utilization to the 30-day challenge, all those advanced credit repair strategies, alternative credit options, even bankruptcy. I'm amazed by how much information they packed into these pages.
I know. It's a lot to digest.
It is. But we're not done yet. There's still more to explore. Join us for the final part of this episode, where we'll delve into the remaining chapters and uncover even more valuable insights for taking control of your credit destiny. All right, welcome back to our credit deep dive. We've been through a lot, from credit reports and scores to all sorts of strategies to improve your credit.
We have. But there's still more to uncover.
I know, right? In these final chapters, there's got to be some more gems.
Oh, definitely. One thing we haven't touched on is negotiating with creditors.
Negotiating with creditors. That sounds a bit scary, to be honest.
I know, right? But the ebooks actually have some good tips and strategies to approach those conversations.
Okay, good to know.
They emphasize that creditors are often willing to work with you,
Really?
especially if you're proactive and show that you really want to resolve your debt.
So it's not about avoiding them, it's about engaging with them strategically.
Exactly.
So what kind of advice do they give? Like, how do you actually negotiate with these guys?
Well, first, they say gather all your documentation, like account statements, payment history, all that stuff.
Okay, so be organized. Got it.
Right. And prepare a clear explanation of your financial situation, like why you're seeking a payment arrangement or a debt settlement.
So they know you're serious.
Exactly.
Makes sense. Any tips on the actual negotiation itself?
Yeah, they stress the importance of staying calm and respectful, no matter how frustrating it gets.
Right. Don't lose your cool.
Exactly. And don't make promises you can't keep.
Well, that's a good one.
Be upfront about your limitations and try to work together to find a solution.
Collaborate, not combat. I like it.
Right.
Did the ebooks talk about any specific negotiation tactics?
Yeah, they mention negotiating a lower interest rate, maybe waiving some late fees, or even settling the debt for a lower amount.
Okay, so you can actually try to get them to reduce what you owe.
Sometimes. They say creditors are often more open to negotiation if you have a lump sum to offer upfront.
Even if it's less than the total amount.
Even if it's less, yeah. It shows good faith.
Okay, that's good to know. But what about those situations where the creditors just aren't playing ball? Like, what do you do then?
The ebooks suggest reaching out to those consumer credit counseling agencies.
Oh, right. Those can be helpful.
Yeah, they can give you guidance on negotiating, help you create a budget, set up a debt management plan.
It's like having a financial coach in your corner.
Exactly.
Now, before we wrap up this whole credit deep dive, what stands out to you as the most valuable takeaway?
I think it's the overall empowering message of these ebooks.
Yeah, I agree.
They don't just give you advice and strategies, they give you hope. They remind you that no matter what your credit situation looks like right now, you can take control and change it.
That's so true. It's not just about the techniques, it's about changing your mindset.
Exactly.
These ebooks really show that knowledge is power.
Absolutely. And with the right tools and guidance, anyone can reach their financial goals.
Well said. Thank you so much for joining us on this credit adventure. We hope you found it helpful and empowering.
My pleasure.
And remember, it's never too late to take control of your credit and build that brighter financial future.